This afternoon we have Meeru joining us from Vidge's restaurant. She'll be joining us any minute now, and we'll just welcome her to come on in. And just has to eat drink Vidge's. You just gotta request it. There we go. We're coming on right now. I see. Let's see.
Hey.
There we go. Hi, Meeru.
Hey. Hey.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great, thank you. We've got people joining us now, and people will have got questions. Just going to write them on in there, and Meeru and I will look for those. We will answer them as best as we can. I want to talk to you first about the restaurant industry locally. You have a lot of friends that have restaurants. With the COVID pandemic, how has that changed the face of the restaurants in the Vancouver scene for your friends that have other restaurants?
Well, the face of the restaurant, we just don't know. Right. We were, the restaurant industry. I mean, I've been in the business now for 26 years, and we had a huge change with the advent of social media. Right. So we've got like big changes that happened, like the first, I would say 15 years we ran the restaurant, and then the past 10 years. And now we've had our next big change with COVID-19.
Right.
So I'm not all of us, but we just don't know. Like, we don't know how much of sorry, I'm just trying to get this fixed. We don't know how much of, the cool factor is going to be involved versus the safety factor versus the social distancing. There's just so many unknowns right now.
Right. So we were talking about recently that you had closed your Rangoli restaurant, which had been there for many years right off in South Granville. Why did you close it back in March, right when the pandemic kind of hit, rather than waiting a few months to kind of like now? You kind of got a jump start.
Well, you know what? We were just really trying to pre-plan. One of my background is in economic development, like before the restaurant business. And so I'm an avid reader in terms of world events, in terms of economics. I don't just focus on, as much as I love food, it's not just on food. And so we kind of made the prediction that if anything, things are going to get worse. And we predicted that definitely tourism was going to be lost this summer. Right. And so based on the worst case scenario, right, borders closed, no tourism, full on pandemic, we just realized that we're not going to just suck all these fixed costs into two restaurants. And so we own 20% of the Vidge's building. And so, and Vidge's obviously is the bigger, I feel bad saying that about Rangoli, but it's Vidge's Rangoli, right?
Right.
So it just made sense to consolidate everything that was great about Rangoli into the bigger location of Vidge's.
So now that you've done that, how does that work? How do people come in the door and they go Vidge's one side, Rangoli the other side, or how does that work?
We ourselves were unsure about that. So while we were doing the takeout and the delivery, we had two separate menus in that kitchen. But now that we've opened up for dining on the patio, the dining room and everything, it's a little confusing to do Vidge's and Rangoli. So what it'll basically, Richard, it's going to end up being Vidge's. Okay. But everything people loved about which I loved about Rangoli. Rangoli was like my second child, right? Everything I loved about Rangoli, including the staff, is at Vidge's.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you have like menu items would be like your dessert. You had that, I don't remember what you call it. That's that kind of like a sweet pancake for dessert at Rangoli.
Oh, the meaty.
Right. It's amazing. Yeah. You can't lose that, right? So is that on the menu at Vidge's now?
Well, so the other thing we have to change about the menu is a lot of our labor intensive dishes with COVID-19. And so our expenses, restaurant expenses have changed now, right? So for example, I can't really put the super duper labor intensive dishes back on the menu until there's a demand for them. And at 50% capacity, demand is down by 50%. I don't want to talk too much boring economics, but we have a lot of reimagining to do. Is how do we make restaurants fun while people are going to feel safe? And can we have fun if we can't be all touchy and feel close to one another? One of the reasons we all went out so much is because many of us live alone, right? And we got that people to people fix by going out. Right.
And you couldn't quite do that during COVID, stuck in your living room.
No, you can't. No, Zoom doesn't cut it.
No, it doesn't. It worked, but it doesn't.
Even in the beginning, I was like, "Whoa, Zoom! It's so cool."
How do you feel about pivoting? I mean, a lot of people have been talking about that lately. Like, how does a restaurant that did 100 seats and they had one, just people coming in for dinner every night. How, some of those restaurants had to pivot to other things, meal kits and all sorts of things. How do you feel about that as far as the restaurant industry goes?
I think we have to do whatever is comfortable, whatever's in our hands that's comfortable for us to do. So I didn't pivot that much. Sure, we started doing takeout and delivery and pickup, but that was kind of an easy thing for us to do. We basically stuck to what we knew we were really good at doing because, again, my concerns were, all right, we've just laid off 90% of our staff. And at Vidges and Rangoli, like I said, Rangoli, I mean, especially the kitchen staff, they've been with us for 16 years. Vidges staff has been with us 26 years, right? And, you don't want to lose staff. A, you just don't want to lose staff that you love, but B, you don't want to lose staff that you've trained and they know your food, they know how to cook. It would be so hard to reopen Vidges at the 100% capacity, let's say 9 months from now, if I've lost a lot of my staff.
Right. So how did you do it? How did you keep?
Well, so we kept the delivery section going, right? The delivery pickup. We kept the Rangoli one and the Vidges one going. And so we were able to keep that thread of our core staff working, so that we have a solid place to pick up once we reopen.
Right. Okay. So now you've reopened, right?
Yes.
And you've got the patio going, and you have dining room.
Yeah.
Yesterday, the government changed the law for people to dine, so it's 80% now. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's up at 80%.
Okay.
But you see, they said 80%, but as long as you can maintain that 2 meters of social distancing.
Right.
And the social distancing numbers changed drastically. So if we get a bunch of 2s coming in, we get a lot less people because you have to maintain that 2 meters between the table. But if you're a table of 6, all 6 of you, then it's just 2 meters of a table of 6 and another table of 6. So
interesting.
A secret Vidges wants you to come in 4s, not just 2s.
Okay, there you go. Everybody coming in 4s, but I think you kind of have to still think of the family unit and how you expand your bubble, right? And do you have who enters that space, right?
Right.
But 4 that does actually make sense. 4s as opposed to 1. You don't want the single.
No, I'm not. No, don't get me wrong. I'm
kidding.
not saying don't come in on a date. I'm just saying, so how the 80% works is it doesn't really work in terms of 2s, but if tables of 6s come in, tables of 4 come in, we can increase the numbers as long as we're maintaining that 2 meters of distancing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which we want to maintain, by the way. I don't know. We are in support of these rules, right? Because we are all, community members and we all have kids, and I don't personally want a pandemic hitting Vancouver the way, so my sister and her family live in New York City and all 4 of them got COVID-19.
Wow. Okay.
So it's very close to me. My cousin got it in New York. It's a very close thing. For me, it's not this far away thing. And so I don't want it to happen to Vancouver, anywhere remotely what happened to New York.
Well, I think Vancouver is lucky. BC is lucky in the way it was handled. And, kudos to the provincial health officer for doing that.
Yeah.
But, obviously border, we were just talking about the border thing is an issue. We hope that the border stays closed for a while because we see what's going on in Washington State and we don't want that coming up here, right? So yes, we don't have tourism, but maybe that's okay this summer, right? Because we need to keep it good.
I'm always, I think it's a great thing, but a lot of people find it very irritating that I've got this button inside of me that's a very la happy button. And we're going through a tough time right now, but we're going to be going through this tough time. So for me, I think it's going to be a really interesting kind of a home experiment to see how self-reliant is BC.
Right.
Let's just see for the fun of it even. Let's just see. I was telling you at an earlier point that at some point, like the story of the three little pigs, you blow your house down. Right. A part of me does have that hang up, like, wow, COVID-19 just came and blew on my businesses and so many restaurant homes, very few of the restaurants were that brick house. Right. For whatever reasons, our cost and all that sort of stuff. Right. But I'm aware of that now, that I need a brick house of a restaurant so that the next time something out of my control happens, you don't just closed Rangoli. You know,
Right.
I
Oh,
want
right.
to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
stronger, but it'll be in. I think there are too many restaurants. I do. They're
Right.
just, as soon as we quit eating at home, right? As soon as we quit cooking at home, it turned into it. It seemed like an easy way to make money, and then just as many would close, just as many would
Yeah.
open,
Right.
and we opened. I'm yelping that when we opened Vidges and Rangoli. Very different mindset. I don't know if anybody who's listening to me read Gabriella Hamilton's
Right. Yeah.
piece in the New York Times. For us, our restaurants are who we are. It's a labor, not just of love. It's just our personalities. It's not a career. It's part of our it's our existence. And those restaurants are very different than restaurants that just pop up to cater to people's love of salt and oil and animal flesh packed up in a nice little takeout container, and it's cheap and you can eat it. And it's hard to compete with that. And so in British Columbia this summer, we're shut down. It'll be interesting and fun to see can we businesses and the population of BC, to what extent are we going to survive and thrive? Mm-hmm. And what changes are we going to make in the meantime?
Right, because Gabriel's article, I read that back in March, and she's an amazing chef and she has amazing restaurants, and she already had to change everything, and she was worried about how she was going to go forward. And obviously New York City's situation is different than ours, and I don't know what's happened now since when she wrote that and that article came out, but you're right, a lot of people in the restaurant industry read that going, wow, like just amazing to see, read this and see it and see how to go forward. But you were saying too, there's a lot of restaurants in Vancouver. Like you were saying before, there's too many restaurants in Vancouver. And there are, and it's a matter of what will happen now, right? We want everyone to survive, but how will things go? We already know that downtown Vancouver right now is suffering because a lot of the workers are not working there. They're working from home outside the downtown core, and restaurants are empty downtown. So that's a problem, and there's no tourists. So what are people going to do? And I don't know. I mean, I just don't know what's going to happen down there.
I've always had this thing. I mean, I've been going on about this for years. It's not good for us, right? It's just not good for us. And my mom always said growing up, it's in the Indian culture, right? Like the hot and the cold. It's not good for us to eat out so much. Right? It's not good for our inner zen to be just always eating out, because we need to have the simplicity and the nourishment of home just for our mental health as well.
Right.
And so I think it'll be a good time for everybody to balance, right? To kind of balance things out and see what happens.
So we noticed that a lot of people were cooking at home since March, more so than ever. And you love that. I know that. And you were cooking at home. So tell me a little about that, because you have your cookbooks, and I know people are using them all the time. A lot of people use them for special occasions, but I would imagine now people have been using them more so. Are you getting people writing to you about recipes and that kind of thing and cooking? Tell me more.
What I did start doing, and it was a lot of fun. I started giving out complimentary Zoom cooking classes. So what I had said was, all right, find 4 people. And get 4 people, let's choose the same ingredients, and I will just get on there, and for 1 hour, I will walk all 4 of you simultaneously. So I did one, I think one was in Toronto, 2 were in Vancouver. I did one in New York City for 6 different people. I'll take that hour. We're all going to make the same dish, and I'll walk you through to it from beginning to end. And that was a lot of fun, and I love the look on people's faces like, wow, I just made a curry at home, right? Yeah. And so it's not that hard.
Right, but it takes a little time and a little patience.
You just got to want to do it, right? You just got to want to do it. It's, I suppose, like for me in gardening on my deck, like it's not so hard. Just put the seeds in the pots.
Right. And right. But then people have these beautiful meals at home, right? So it's exciting.
Well, that's the other thing. When did our expectations of a beautiful meal at home become so unattainable? Right? I mean, I do one bowl cooking here. Everybody's probably thinking like, whoa, Meeru's household. Oh my God, the table's all set. Absolutely not. Right? I've got big bowls. I cook for about maybe an hour maximum, and everything is in one big fat bowl that we eat. I don't want a big fat cleanup before or after dinner, but I make sure that what's in that bowl tastes really good.
So inspirational cooking over the last few months versus what's
Yeah.
coming up in the summer. Where do you get your inspiration for, like, I'm going to cook this tonight, or I'm going to cook this in 3 days? How do you
I imagine it going through my body.
Okay, interesting.
That's what I do. You know how everybody, I can't meditate and I can't do that yoga thing when they ask you to, that little balloon on the top of your head and imagine this and that. I can't imagine my breath, but I can totally imagine my body's reaction to whatever I put inside of it, right?
Okay.
Starting from my nose, starting from my eyes when I see it, to my nose when I'm smelling it, to my mouth as I'm tasting it, to my stomach, how it's going to handle it, and then no more TMI, but you know where I'm getting at, right?
Right.
And so I just imagine, and I think, all right, who am I cooking for tonight? And you know what? Mood has a lot to play with it as well. It's mood. So before, when I was cooking at home 4 or 5 times a week and eating out, I was making vegan, healthy, super healthy vegan dishes at home. Just because we were going out, but now, as we've been eating at home 7 nights of the week, well, actually days and nights,
Right.
I haven't been as healthy because you want something special,
Right.
One thing I did pick up, what I realized is, I don't know if anybody has read that book at the China Study.
Okay, the China Study.
And now that book really pushes for veganism, but I read it like from front to back. But the Chinese way of eating was that they were about 80 to 85% vegan. But they flavored things with meat. They flavored it. So that's one thing I started doing over the pandemic, was it's a mostly vegetarian meal, right?
Okay.
But to get that satisfaction of special, or whatever you want to call it, right? I would just add like a 10% flavor.
Okay, so what did you add?
Like, sometimes a little bit of bacon, sometimes just a little bit of red meat, sometimes a little bit of lamb, but that would be the complement to the main dish, which would be vegetarian.
Okay.
Oh, a fried egg on top is the easiest thing.
So this in the spring, I said March and April, the weather wasn't so great. So people were doing these comfort food meals, whether they were cooking or they were taking out. I saw a lot of takeout going on of lasagnas and mac and cheese and all that kind of stuff. It's just great for a while when it's not so great weather. Now, obviously, it's still not so great weather, but at least it looks like it's hopeful the next week or so we'll start seeing some warmer weather. Yeah. For the summertime, what do you think people should be cooking?
Well, summertime is the best time. Again, I was just talking about, let's just see how BC can take care of BC.
Right.
So summertime is the best time to cook what's at the farmers markets. I know that sounds like such a cliche, but even grocery stores have a lot of stuff, right? That's growing here in the summertime. Well, tomatoes.
Right. Okay.
Right. Tomatoes, big time in the summertime. Carrots are big in the summer. Whatever you're getting at the farmers, I mean, it's a great time to go vegetarian.
Okay.
In the summertime, I like I said, we eat meat once a week, religiously at home. Right. We'll eat fish once a week. We'll eat meat once a week. But we are also vegan a lot of times as well. It's just good to have that nice balance. My big thing is the oil and the salt.
Right.
Right. And just the yucky ingredients. And I'm a firm believer that the wrong oil heated at the wrong temperature. Okay, I think it was some TED talk on this. We all have cancer cells inside of us, right? In some of us, the cancer cells develop or they don't. And I, for some reason, do believe that the wrong oils heated at the wrong temperatures, rancid oils, I think are just really, really bad for you. So one of the reasons why I don't do yucky, cheap ass takeout is because I don't know what kind of oil is there. And I don't want a bunch of oil and salt. So sometimes it's really good if you're a little drunk, by the way.
Okay.
Then it's okay.
For your restaurant, what oils are you cooking with?
So we use grapeseed, we use non-GMO canola, we use ghee, I'll use coconut. We'll use different oils, but the key is you have to get the right oil that's made for the right heating temperature. Okay. So I'm not having a discussion right now like, oh, it has to be an organic, I'm going to get a bunch of emails now for people telling me how horrible canola is or how horrible. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, so even peanut oil, for example, groundnut oil, it's a high heat temperature. Ghee, coconut oil, it's a high heat temperature, right? I'm talking about getting the right oil that's meant for what you're cooking. So at home, I love using sunflower oil that's for frying or cooking.
Okay. Well, we have one question here about extra virgin olive oil. What's that like for cooking? What do you think?
So if you go to the store, it will tell you if this is for cooking or not for cooking. Even sunflower oil, it will tell you this is for salads or it's
Okay.
for cooking.
Okay.
And so I have a different olive oil that I use for cooking and a different olive oil that I use for salads.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a really expensive frou-frou thing that I do, but it's not.
Okay, well, that's
No.
good. I mean, there was a lot going on with the whole cooking thing because you see people doing it. But I think now people want to get out. They've been home for a long time, and they want to get out. But then the thing is, like, how do you decide where are you going to go? Right? For a little while, it's been like, I don't want to go to a restaurant. I want to sit in a patio.
Yeah.
So the whole city got together, and finally the patios have been approved. A lot of restaurants are opening with patios right now, so you'll see a lot more of that this summer. Some people are comfortable with eating in the restaurant, and they're going ahead and doing that, right? So we were talking earlier about pricing. So you think that, prices are a little off here. Your margins for your profit margins are low for a restaurant industry. How
Right.
do you get it higher? How do you think what is the wave of the future?
Well, so the thing, what I've done at Rangoli, I just see something extra virgin is such a premium product. It shouldn't be used for cooking. Absolutely. There's different types. I'm trying to get a look at my olive oil right now, what it says, but absolutely. It doesn't always have to be the extra virgin olive oil that you use for cooking. So again, you have to read the label of the oil to make sure that it's meant for the actual temperature. Going back to the restaurant. So what we did is if our restaurant's pockets are less because we've had such a loss of revenue, we need to assume that a lot of our customers have less money in their wallet as well.
Right.
So what we've done at the menu is we've done our pricing according to a lot more wallets. So I'll have a $32 entree. I also have an $18 entree.
Okay.
All right. But what I have to control now is the labor cost behind it, right? And the food cost, right? But right now we also have that 75% federal wage subsidy.
Right.
Up to I think up to $847 per employee.
Okay.
And so that for us at least is a huge saving grace in terms of getting through this period right now.
Right.
Right. So right now I can serve everything that I would like to do. Right. And even at 50%, the federal government is helping me out. And so while the federal government is helping, not me, just us, while the government's helping us out, I'm using this time, right, to get to the drawing board and figure out, okay, what dishes have sold the most.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Right? Like, has it been my $18, $19, $20 dishes that have sold the most? Oh, wow. Are people still eating those lamb popsicles like they're, just coming out of whatever? Like, what's selling the most? Talking to the customers, right?
Right.
Where are they at their comfort level? And then what I hope to do is we're going to then, come up with new menus and a new way. We just have to be strong enough to reimagine whatever is going to need to be done.
Right. And
I don't even think it's just restaurants. Canby Street is my neighborhood.
Right.
Main and Canby. I'm as concerned about the funky little shops on my street that make so much of the ambience of where I live, right? And why I want to live here. And I know the people who have the shops, and I'm just as worried about them and their rents and how are they going to do it. It's not just the restaurant. And this is then our entire city culture that we're talking about.
Right. We don't want to lose it.
Yeah. So I don't see Vidges just as a standalone, oh my goodness, how are we going to survive? Right. I would love it if we would mix and match and figure, well, we did this. How about you? Well, we did this. How about you? And then again, the code word for the big word for is reimagine our city, because a second wave may come. Right.
Yeah. And you were telling me earlier too, it's quite expensive to reopen a restaurant.
Oh my gosh. Yes. It's really expensive to reopen a restaurant. Yeah. We need so much staffing.
Right.
Right. You need more staffing for less people. And, you bring them back on and then you start ordering again, and you got to make sure that, the kitchen is now fitted to make sure it's safe. The dining room has been fitted to make sure it's safe. A lot of our staff, front staff, Vancouver's in a very expensive place to be on EI.
Oh, okay.
And so a lot of a good portion of our staff went back to the island or just, went back home, wherever home is with mom and dad.
Right.
And I'm not sure how secure they would feel that, all right, well, let's unpack and repack and go back to Vancouver, only to be told, hey, you're laid off again because a second wave of a pandemic has hit.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we hope that that doesn't happen.
Yeah. So
Of
there's
course.
so many unknowns. There's so many unknowns right now.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Tell me about the TV show. You recently did a show on Food Network, Wall of Chefs. How did
Yeah.
that come? How did that come about?
I don't know. I just got the email. I just got an email saying, would you be interested in doing this? And it is for home cooking. It's not a, so one thing about me, and I don't like to compete. I don't enjoy competing with other chefs. It's not my thing. It doesn't make me feel good, if that makes any sense. And I don't know how to do the chop, 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 chop. I never learned how to do that chop, chop, chop. I don't like to sweat a lot when I'm cooking. That's not my cooking energy. I don't want this to be, I don't know. It's just not me. And if I spend too much time competing with other chefs, for me, that takes time away that I'm spending on my other recipes. It takes time away on, all right, how can I incorporate these colors into this dish and my staff? But I do compete a lot with myself, right? Within myself, like, all right, I do that. And that way it's good. So Wall of Chefs, I said yes to, because I wasn't going to be competing with other chefs, right? I don't like prizes like that, first, second, whatever, right? It's just, why do we need to, we should love each other, I suppose. But these were for home cooks. So I said yes. And so I was a judge, like one of the 12 judges. Okay. And it really was 4 home cooks that would get up there. And I was surprised at how great they were.
Okay, that's good. Would you do it again?
Yes, I would do it again, but I would like to be the boss.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. Food Network, are you listening?
Yeah, I would like to be the boss, only because, not because the current boss it looked like so much fun to be the boss. Mm-hmm. Right? It looked like I would love to bring out more. So if I had one thing about food, we all know that food is really the core of our existence, food and water, right? And it's amazing. I had read this years ago, maybe 20 odd years ago. Some woman, she was a widow 3 times, and she was the poet laureate of the US. And somebody asked her, like, how come you meet men so quickly? Mm-hmm. And she said, it's easy. I cook. Okay. And she didn't say that in some old-fashioned traditional way. Her point was that it doesn't matter if a man is cooking for a woman or whatever, but it's so in who we are, like what we eat. It's a really big deal. So I think that I would do a Wall of Chefs, but I would bring about more of how do we take what we cook to who we feel as our place in this world is. Mm-hmm. Right? We just want to belong in the end, right?
Right. So a few years ago, you did an event called Joy of Feeding with Mary McKay from Terra Breads. You did a great job. You had all these cooks involved from all these different ethnicities, nationalities together, and they were cooking, and it was a great event. And I don't know, I think it's sort of fallen off the wagon the last couple of years, but to encourage people to cook all these different recipes, what would you do now? Like, now that you're fast track a couple of years ahead, how do you get people cooking all these different kinds of ethnicity meals outside of their comfort zone? So outside of, if you're Italian, cook something else, right? Cook Egyptian, cook whatever it is, right? How would you encourage people to do that?
Well, the first thing I would encourage everybody to do, right, before you can cook anything else, is choose 5 dishes that you can just cook like that don't stress you out, right? Right. And you can come home and it's a habit to cook them, right? Once you have these 5 dishes, it becomes a habit to cook them, and you eat them and you will serve them and everything. It doesn't matter if it's just 3 ingredients. Once you've got the 5 dishes, then you venture out to what other, so for example, I love Japanese food, right? But I know for a fact that I'm never going to learn how to cut sushi and eat sushi, right? I can do noodles. So I identify, like, all right, you know, I'm not going to make hummus. I will make hummus, but just figure out, what countries are you attracted to? Mm-hmm. Right? It's like dating almost. Like, what countries do you find the cuisine a lot of fun and you're attracted to? Joy of Feeding. So what we did for Joy of Feeding is we had 14 home cooks of 14 different professions, of 14 or 15 different heritages. Right. Right. So you would have the school teacher from some African, you know, from, I don't know, from Ghana, next to the architect from Chile, next to the housewife from here, it was just, you've been to Joy of Feeding. Right, I did. And the whole point of Joy of Feeding was, you know, it really bugs me in our societies, that we act as if a surgeon is more important than a garbage collector, right? Or that a doctor is more important than a teacher, right? And so it also at some level bugs me that a lot of people who don't make more than 15, 16, 17 bucks an hour, they don't have access to all the amazing foods that are out there in restaurants. So the joy of feeding for me was not the joy of cooking, because cooking really can be a pain in the ass, especially if you've been working 8-9 hours a day. The joy of feeding was, so let's talk about Black Lives Matter, right? Racism. It's not necessarily that we think we're racist. A lot of us just happen to, without realizing it, is a lack of exposure, right? So joy of feeding was, I'm going to use the one where I focused on the Middle East. So we had a cook from Syria, we had a cook from Pakistan, we had a cook from Egypt, all women. And the thing is, if you hear something about a country, and let's say on the radio in the morning, oh, blah, 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 this happened in Syria, 30 people were killed, you hear it, but then you go about your day.
Right.
At the joy of feeding, if you're being served a kibbeh from Syria, from a woman, and she's eyeing you and handing you her kibbeh, and you're eyeing her back, and then you eat that kibbeh from Syria. The next time you hear the news, you've just made a connection to Syria, and you just care that much more about Syria.
Right, that's good.
Right, and so that's why we have Ethiopia, and also ethnicities and heritages, right? All of us have heritages. So joy of feeding also included France, the UK, Germany, Sweden, not just quote unquote ethnic countries.
Right. Would you bring that back? Will you be able to bring that back? Not now, but later?
Yeah, so Joy of Feeding was a really expensive event to hold. It was a very generous event, and it was also a fundraiser.
Right.
And so what happened was, it requires a lot of time and a lot of volunteer time. And I've really got to say, UBC Farm has been just awesome. But then my father unexpectedly died. And my mom had, she was debilitated with a bunch of strokes. And so I just couldn't do it. So one summer, Dad died. The next summer, Mom had to come and live with me in Vancouver. It was just too much happening in my personal life.
Right.
And so I would need to get a feel, is Vancouver ready for another Joy of Feeding? Because to put in all that work and effort, and it's been gone for about 2 or 3 years, is there a demand that Vancouverites are still willing to pay that 55, 60 bucks to have those, 15 different meals from all over? And I think a couple of my cooks from Joy of Feeding are watching this right now.
Okay, that's good. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Someone just made a comment and said the Joy of Feeding would make a great TV show. So you never know, right?
I think it'd make a wonderful TV show, because we also did a recipe book and a storybook, so that right when you entered UBC Farm, the first thing you got was a booklet that told you a little bit of a background on the cook. Where are they from? What's their little story? What do the cooks want the guests to know about them? And so, you can say, oh, okay, Turkey. Oh, wow, this is what's written about the Turkish cook. Then you can go to the Turkey station and talk to the family that's cooking. And the recipe is there as well for the dish. So you already know what it's supposed to taste like.
So back to restaurant dining. Have you gone out yourself to other restaurants yet since you were just kind of allowed to go out again in phase 2? Have you been out yourself?
A lot. I've been a lot to Vidges.
But outside of Vidges, have you been anywhere yet? No.
Pardon?
Have you been anywhere yet?
We just opened up Vidges.
Right.
Right. And so our first restaurant we're going to go to is Acorn when it opens up.
Okay. So Acorn's just about to reopen.
On Monday. Yeah.
So I was just going to ask you, where do you want to go once you can go out?
Well, Shira's a good friend of mine. And so, and plus she's about to have her baby. And, it's this whole COVID-19 and the social distancing, it's really hard on the cozy, smaller restaurants.
Right, of course.
And so how do you do it, right? How do you do that? And it's really hard and complicated for them. And so I just, that was on my zone is, all right, Shira's opening up Acorn. We're going to go to Acorn as soon as we can. I've just been obsessed with reopening Vidges. And I sit there, I go there for lunch, I go there for dinner, because I'm trying to feel the vibe of my own restaurant.
Right.
Right? I am kind of looking around at the customers without being nosy. Are the customers looking happy? Are they feeling lost with this distance between tables? And I'm taking so many notes and hoping to just recreate whatever needs to be recreated whenever the time is ready for that.
What do you feel about the COVID fee? We've been hearing a lot about this right now. I mean, there's a lot of expenses around the whole getting prepared to open your restaurant. And do you pass it on to the customer as part of your actual dish, or do you put an extra line item on the receipt that says there's a COVID fee?
No, I don't believe in the COVID fee. I don't, because again, all of us are suffering. It's not
Right.
just yes, the restaurant industry is suffering a lot, but a lot of people have been, losing work and, demand. It's hard on everybody. So, and plus, at least for us, like I said, we have the 75% wage
Right.
subsidy right now. And I'm using that 75% wage subsidy to make sure that the customers are welcome and they can afford it based on what I'm producing. And it gives me leeway, again, to relook at my business and to figure it out. So
Right.
I'm not going to, we aren't going to do any sort of an extra COVID. They're already, tipping and all sorts of different taxes and everything. To put it on, it's up to the restaurant. It's up to any restaurant to decide what they want to do in terms of menu prices. And if the customers are going to come back for it, then absolutely.
Right.
Right? If the customer chooses, right? The customer chooses. But I do think, I read someplace a long time ago, the number one reason customers used to dine out was ambiance, Richard.
Right. I know.
Not the food.
Yeah, that's right.
It was ambiance, then food, and then service.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
so
true.
a lot of people are willing to pay a lot of money for ambiance.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you think the small restaurant in Vancouver is going to survive this pandemic?
That's a real tough one. I think the small restaurant is going to have to figure out, do we love our small restaurant so much that we're just going to figure out this restaurant? Is this a love, or was this just a business venture of a small restaurant, right? And maybe a lot of the small restaurants that were business ventures aren't going to be business ventures anymore. Right. I do think if certain small restaurants, if it is a very special restaurant and suddenly you've gone from serving 40 people to maybe 12 people, and you are a very chef focused restaurant, a chef ambiance, I wouldn't mind paying extra money.
Okay.
I really wouldn't mind paying extra money at all. And just maybe I'll eat out less and may the best restaurants win. But I've always said that everybody, if we're okay paying a lot of money for our MAC cosmetics, our designer blue jeans, we pay a lot of money for very materialistic things. It's okay to pay a lot of money for good food as well. Right.
Of course. That makes sense.
We're paying a lot of money for cheap takeout, actually. Think about it. You do a cheap ass I know that's my favorite word, cheap ass takeout. Think about how expensive it is. The packaging that's polluting. Right?
Okay.
The driving of the door dashes and everything. If you look at the overall climate change costs of takeout, right? Your health, right? Cheap ingredients are not good for the planet. If you look at the actual cost of takeout, just because it's $12.99 doesn't mean that just because you're paying $12.99 or $15.99, I don't even know. I mean, right? It's in the greater picture of the world, it's it's way more expensive. Than dining out at a restaurant that's taking a lot of care, right? In sourcing what they're sourcing and in their ingredients and their practices. So in the bigger scheme of things, an expensive eating out at a small restaurant where your heart feels like it's welcomed is not as expensive as people think it is.
Right. No, that's actually a good point, because people don't realize, you see what's on DoorDash in your neighborhood and you order it, but it comes cold, first of all. That's another thing. You guys don't make very much money on it. And people think, oh, great, I got my dinner, but that's just not the way to go.
It's again, everything is a treat. We should be, I'm not a binger, right? I'm not a binger. Everything is a treat. Sometimes you really just want to sit on that sofa and eat your cold pizza that was delivered and watch something on Netflix. I understand all of that, but it's not a healthy habit.
Right.
And I would love to see the smaller restaurants that love being restaurants that add something to our city. I would love to see them survive.
So before we go, what dishes would you like people to come to Rank Two Vidges right now and enjoy?
I'm sorry, I was reading something. Two dishes?
What dishes would you like people to come to Vidges right now and enjoy?
Right now, the best thing to enjoy is the coconut curried vegetables, right? Because that's when we're starting getting all the local vegetables, right? The coconut curried vegetables, I would say. Oh, I feel like all of my dishes are going to get mad if I say something else. The coconut curried vegetables and anything with eggplant in it, okay. Right? And the trout.
Trout, okay.
The rainbow trout, yeah.
Rainbow trout, okay. Yeah. Summery, light, and good for you.
Yeah.
Right? So thank you so much, Meeru, for joining me this afternoon. And if anybody missed this session, you can find it on my IGTV Instagram shortly. And watch and go to the restaurants and go visit Vidges.
Hold on, everybody. Hold on. One more thing. Yeah. Whoever has been watching this, you know what? This is a great time for you all who are watching to give us ideas of how you would like for us to reimagine our restaurants to suit you.
Right, that's actually a really good point.
I'm not the boss of what you all like. I mean, I would love to hear back. All of the restaurants would love to hear back.
So feedback's important.
Right. What would you like to see happening when you eat out?
Right. So feedback, so you're saying like it's a good idea for people to give feedback to all these restaurants right now so they know what to serve and they know how to kind of plan going forward. Because I loved your word, you said reimagining. I think that was a great buzzword today because a lot of people are talking about that Vancouver needs to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And let us be the first ones to reimagine our cities. Yeah.
Very well said. As always.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye.